And out of this opening crawls a very large, what I understood to be an 8-foot tall black creature with a head and no neck and a torso, arms and legs. No details or features noted on it.
There was a second witness standing right beside the other guy with the infrared technology. All he could see was a dull yellow light that had expanded to about 4 feet in diameter.
I think about Bigfoot and I'm like, okay, I don't even want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. The DNA results end up saying that this is from an unknown donor on the male side.
Was involved in doing research on the elongated skulls in Peru. And they had almost identical DNA results on their skulls.
The commonality with UFOs to how these things can be physical and also non-physical.
We live in the middle of some other kind of intelligence. The secrecy begins with them, whoever they are, these visitors, these entities that interject themselves into our lives. Who they are, why they're here, what their interest is in us long term. We don't know the answers. We can surmise, but we don't know the answers to any of the big stuff. But we can say, I can say with certainty that there is some kind of intelligence operating here, that it shows us glimpses of itself from time to time on its own agenda. But it is the architect of the secrecy.
I believe that there are aspects of consciousness that are associated with the UFO phenomena that we have not addressed fully.
The global public is not ready to have global confirmation of this. A lot of disturbing things will occur. It's just too powerful.
People have ignored these facts. They'd like it to go away. It's not going away. It's not going away because the phenomenon itself doesn't go away. It's been with humans, every continent, every culture throughout human history. It's here whether we like it or not, and it's here today.
This is weaponized.
This is Weaponized. I'm George Knapp here in Las Vegas, joined by my friend and colleague, Jeremy Corbell. Jeremy, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. How you doing?
It's quite a season for UFO movies, films, documentaries. The Age of Disclosure, it's finally out. Dan Farrow's film, packed with interviews with all these intelligence luminaries, many of whom you and I have spoken to before over the years. We know that James Fox is getting ready to uncork a new version of his film about the Voronezh incident down in Brazil, a live alien that interacted with the military and these doctors. Looking forward to seeing that. And then there's a film that's just been released, American Sasquatch, Man, Myth, or Monster by Dave Paulides and produced by our friend Jim Martin and their team. And we don't usually talk about cryptids and creatures on this program, but we're more looking at UFOs that crash and government investigations. But as Dave makes clear in this movie, these Sasquatch stories do have a direct relationship to the phenomena that we discuss on the show. We're going to get to that in just a second, but let's set the stage for that discussion first. The interconnection between UFOs and UAPs and creatures, government investigations, and things of that sort is something that we have explored in the past. For the historians out there, this month, December, marks some fairly important and notable anniversaries. For one thing, 30 years ago this month, Robert Bigelow created NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, and they've done some tremendous groundbreaking work over the years. A couple of months later, NIDS and Robert Bigelow acquired Skinwalker Ranch, and 20 years ago, December 5th, 2005, Colm, Kelleher, and I released our book, Hunt for the Skinwalker, which caused all kinds of ruckus because it didn't just look at the history of UFOs in the Uinta Basin and over that Skinwalker Ranch, Bigelow Ranch at the time. It looked at the interconnections between UFOs, what we'd call UFOs, and all kinds of other things. Animal mutilations, poltergeist activity, holes in the sky, creatures, cryptids, including Bigfoot. There were other animals, other creatures that were seen, exotic birds, things that don't belong there. They're not native. It was as if they're from another reality,
It was as if they're from another time.
Right.
It was almost as if you were being shown this stuff. It was so ridiculous that no one could possibly believe it. These things don't exist, and yet there they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jacques Vallée coined this term. There's a level of absurdity associated with these kinds of reports and sightings that, you know that if you report this kind of stuff, you're going to be ridiculed. But the fact is, during the AAWSAP program, we did start investigating activity with these sightings around the ranch, all of the neighbors, and within a 2-mile radius or so, we interviewed a lot of different people, and we accumulated a ridiculous number of anecdotal stories of people reporting creatures.
And, and I know that these animals that were seen at the ranch should not exist, but they do. They've been seen there for a long time, even before the NIDS team got there, before the Gormans owned the property, as long as humans have lived in the Uinta Basin. You created a film, Hunt for the Skinwalker, a film version that did look into some of the people and people who had witnessed this activity, right?
Yeah, this really blew my mind because, I mean, before I met you, I was super nuts and bolts about UFOs. And then all of a sudden, this creature thing just kept popping in. And I think this is why it's interesting we have this guest today. I mean, look, there's still a stigma about it. And I think about Bigfoot and I'm like, okay, I don't even want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But if you remember, when we were recording, our friend Robbie Williams was at the ranch with us. This is before people were going to the ranch, before it was a big circus. It was all over television. This is when it was like really hard to get on that ranch. And you took me, and it was a couple of times, but it was a really interesting time with Robbie Williams. And I did this interview with Janice and her son. And I had no idea this was coming, but they started to describe an encounter with a being that we would consider to be like Bigfoot. And we recorded it. And that really flipped the script for me because I'm like, well, of course, if there are UFOs, there are these craft, somebody is piloting them. And there's always been this rich history of beings or creatures, even. I'm not going to say beings, like creatures associated with UFOs. So that was kind of my entrance point into it. I do think it'll be interesting to play because the movie's been out for a while. Hunt for the Skinwalker, where you predicted, by the way, you predicted that there was going to be this huge change in the UFO world in 2017. You predicted it because you knew, but it was something you couldn't.
No, I'm psychic. I'm psychic. That's why.
You're psychic. But I watched the opening of the movie opens with you. The first shot is opening with you at your news station with all these, radio dishes around. And you're like, something big is coming, Jeremy. I'm like, well, what? What's coming? Is it going to point back to the ranch? And you didn't answer me and did your famous George Knapp walk off on camera. But anyway, so I was reviewing the movie and I don't know if it's a bonus or an outtake, but there's this really crazy and cool interview with Janice and her son talking about a creature. So I want to play that for our audience as a way to kind of smooth them into what we're about to be talking about on this episode of Weaponized.
So it's not just the ranch, it's all around the Uinta Basins, around your home, around your property, whatever this phenomenon is, it's all around you here.
Yes.
What have you seen? The weirdest shit that you've seen?
I don't remember seeing, but I remember hearing, like the fictional character Bigfoot. No, I just remember hearing it was a loud banging of trees just hitting into each other over here. Just trees just breaking. I was thinking it was somebody chopping wood, but who does chopping wood at almost dusk time? I can understand if it's still light out, but it was just about to get to the tipping point of blackness. Then I was just ignorant, and I found this big old log and I started beating this tree that's up here in front of my house. Started hitting it. And I just remember hearing this weird grunt kind of sound as well. It was just like a weird, it wasn't no cow, it wasn't nothing. We don't even have bears around here, but it sounded huge. It was growling. I just hear this commotion. Tree branches kind of shoving down. Weeds just moving. Just hear it, then doing a high-pitched scream and dark, kind of bulky kind of sound. And I swear, I never been quite scared, but I thought something was going to jump from those bushes and that and just come and lunge at me. Because I could still hear it just kind of breathing heavily. This deep, like, and it was like that, but I was just barely backing way back to my porch. Just barely got my hands on the rail, then that's when I just heard it, and it just took off further back that way. I just hear it like it just seen what I wasn't bugging it or something like that, and it just lost interest and took off. And it just went all dead quiet.
People that haven't had encounters with the kind of thing that you guys have both had encounters with, your neighbors have had encounters with, everybody you know have had encounters. Some people have been harmed by these. Their lives have been changed. Once you see something like this, you can never see the world the same again. What do you say to people that they don't believe it because they've never seen anything? What do you say to those people? Is this real? Is this happening here?
I don't talk about it because if you say something and I answer to it and you get smart with me, or you say, oh, you're just crazy, then I'll shut down. But if you're interested and want to know, what has gone on around down here, fine. But for those non-believers, I guess it just has to happen to you to know it's real. I mean, something is here. What? I don't know. But it seems to have a pattern too, because it comes through the, I guess you call it gulch back here.
Mm-hmm. The gulch.
So there seems to be a path where these things come through, is that
yeah.
So when people don't understand the reality that you're living in, you just don't tell them.
No, I cut them off.
Husha, do you feel the same way? Like you don't share these stories with people unless they're really willing to hear what you're saying? Is that the truth?
Yeah, just very close friends.
Is it real?
Oh, yes, I believe it is much real. All those deniers, then just come out here. I don't care how many numbers. They just got to have that kind of experience, but it's a gamble. Some days they're here, some days they're not. It'll take days, weeks, months, just to have just one little experience. I think just one. Even just seeing a light or a UFO just coming by, just peeking, just once, just get that one image, just like that, and it will just be with them for the rest of their life. Just that one little piece. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not, I don't know. Because seems like when the ones that expect something, it doesn't happen.
Why does this area have so many things all concentrated?
I think there's a main porthole somewhere here. Is what I believe. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Is it from here or is it from somewhere else? The other side or a different world or somewhere, different solar system, just visiting. The universe is wild. There's many planets. There probably is a planet of more of a advanced society that can really just be in a different universe and just like that, just real quick, that just stop time almost. But it just, I don't know, I really would like to know like that. One of these days or something in my life, maybe find out at least something, but I really don't know. A lot of questions, but not a whole lot of answers. I just try to live my life just normally, just trying to relive that and just trying to get all those memories and experience I had, just kind of push it over to the side and just try to walk my way in my life.
I was a non-believer and would laugh, make fun, but once it started happening.
So that was a clip from the movie, and look, it's unavoidable, man. There are creatures, there are beings associated with UFOs, and the reason why I got interested in watching this new movie by Dave Paulides is because that ends up being the conclusion, that this is not some bipedal kind of animal that has been out there for a long time, that there's a technological aspect to it. Now, you've heard a lot about that. Your history with writing the book 20 years ago and having all this interaction with people studying the ranch for the government, creatures is a big part of it, right?
Yeah, and it was crazy then. It's crazy now. It's hard to accept that there's a connection, but it's sort of the lesson of the ranch is that all this stuff is unfolding in one place. The most studied and investigated UFO hotspot ever has all these different phenomena. It's as if it is telling us it's all connected, folks. It's up to you to figure out what it is. And here we are all these years later, still trying to figure out the connection between these different phenomena, still doing the investigations. I want to remind people that the book, Hunt for the Skinwalker, 20 years ago, is what inspired the AAWSAP. The DIA created this program because it was intrigued. Now, it wasn't just studying the ranch. That was an opportunity because that was a place where UFOs happen a lot. But that study became the largest UFO, UAP-related investigation in history, and they did not hesitate to look into stories about creatures and other things, paranormal phenomena that seemingly don't make sense.
I mean, in fact, some of the investigators at the ranch had direct firsthand experience with what they would call creatures. There's two stories that were in the movie Hunt for the Skinwalker and in your book that was the first time, and you actually did a bunch of video or filmed recordings with people like Dr. Kelleher way before you were ever allowed to let it out. So that's kind of what allowed me to make the movie, was that you were able to finally put some of that footage out. There's one thing that really stands out, and a lot of people have talked about it and kind of misinterpreted it. But your original footage really shows what Dr. Kelleher was saying, and that was included in the movie. And I think we should play that clip too. It's this event where they were watching in the field and someone had night vision goggles and they saw a porthole. They report seeing a porthole opening up and this big lumbering, 600-pound, all dark creature crawling out of it, standing up and walking away. I think it's important we go back to the original explanation of that, which you recorded way before the movie I put out, but we're lucky to have it in the movie. But let's hear what Dr. Kelleher actually said about that encounter, because that's going to come up in our interview we're about to do.
Ground zero for odd sightings was always the middle homestead. At nights, lights and orbs could be seen floating through the creaky old buildings. It's also where the rancher had multiple sightings of the most puzzling object, an orange glowing hole in the sky. Gorman told Kelleher and others the orange ball seemed to be a portal, and on the other side was a, quote, different sky. On at least one occasion, the rancher saw a smaller object fly out of the orange orb into the sky over his property. The exotic possibility that the ranch might be a portal to another world has occurred many times to the NIDS team, but how to prove it? In August 1996, the portal theory erupted again in a stark demonstration. The rancher and an investigator were conducting a night surveillance atop the ridges. They spotted a hovering ball of light in the middle homestead.
An object that was seen 4 feet off the ground, that it looked like a dull yellow light. I mean, it was innocuous.
Hovering over the road. It just appeared out of nowhere. And then it begins to expand and grow, and then it opens up into about approximately 3 foot wide opening.
They turned on the night vision equipment they had, and lo and behold, everything from a dull yellow light became like it looked like a three-dimensional tunnel that was just, hovering over the ground.
Where there's a light coming out from within this opening. On the other side of the opening, this is just the natural background of the ranch. They see the road, they see the grass from the pasture and so forth.
Slowly, this incident unfolded where they saw this, what looked like a humanoid creature, crawling, literally elbowing his or her way through this tunnel, hovering 4 feet above the ground.
And out of this opening crawls a very large, what I understood to be an 8 foot tall black creature with a head and no neck and a torso, arms and legs. No details or features noted on it.
There was a second witness standing right beside the other guy with the infrared technology. All he could see was a dull yellow light that had expanded to about 4 feet in diameter.
It just literally grabbed the outside edges of this opening, pulled itself through, came out, stepped onto the dirt road, and ran off into the darkness.
The creature stood up once it got out onto the ground and walked away into the darkness. I mean, can you imagine two people on the top of a cliff or a sort of a bluff 150 feet off the ground in the middle of nowhere,
And then the opening began to shrink and collapse in on itself and turned into a brilliant light that just faded away. That's a perfect description that was given by Matt Visser and John Kramer and Bob Forward and other colleagues of theirs in a physical review paper on the optical nature of wormholes.
I mean, that is not, I would say, military technology. That's some kind of a phenomena that has, it smacks of interdimensional phenomena.
Yes,
Okay, so that kind of lays the groundwork for where we're heading. Dave Paulides, we've known him a long time. I think the public today, probably the general public, knows him better for the Missing 411 books. There are several editions, I think 7 or 8 of them now, another one coming soon, and they've all been bestsellers. And I think people have assumed because Dave, his first couple of books were about Bigfoot, that he was secretly saying all these Missing 411 disappearances. Aha, it's Bigfoot doing it. Bigfoot's kidnapping people, which is not the case. But anyway, he's got this new film out, American Sasquatch, Man with Myth or Monster, and we talked to him about it, and here it comes. Dave Paulides, I think it's this film is sort of represents you coming full circle in that when you started, it was Bigfoot. You know, the first 2 books you wrote. This is 2008, and that's when we first got to know each other when we did our first interview back then. And then you wrote those 2 Bigfoot books, and then you went into 411 and a series of books and films, and now you kind of come full circle back to Bigfoot, except Bigfoot on steroids, a lot of other phenomena. Did you imagine when you started chasing Bigfoot and Bigfoot stories that this is where you'd end up?
Honestly, not. I thought it would just be a couple of books and that'd be the end of it. I didn't have a dog in the fight. I wasn't that interested in it. And I don't know. It's weird that it came back around again.
Well, you know, UFO world, and we've talked about it a lot on this show, hates the idea that there's going to be a Bigfoot somewhere near a flying saucer. They don't want to hear that. Don't want to hear it. And the same has been true for Bigfoot people. And the people in those 2 camps don't really like each other. And then the ghost hunters hate all of them, you know, and everybody has their own niche. But it seems like, you know, since 30 years ago, I would have said there's no connection. But then a little place called Skinwalker Ranch came along where it seemed like everything is thrown into the pot and it's somehow related. And we need to figure out how it's related.
100%. I think that woke up a lot of people to some variables that may be involved that they don't want to admit to. And watching science on your TV evolve at Skinwalker, I think has been an epiphany for a lot of people. And it's actually helped the Bigfoot research, I think.
You know, just for our audience, we focus on UFOs, but I was sent Dave's movie. It's American Sasquatch, Man, Myth, or Monster. I love the title. It was so cool. And I didn't know what to expect. We've talked about, George, on this show before, the creature connection between the UFO topic and what people actually report. And, you know, kind of to my surprise, and I'm kind of allergic to it, look, there are pilots associated with these craft. There are beings associated with these craft. But I didn't expect this movie to reach in and kind of draw such a strong connection. I guess what I've noticed about Dave is, you know, you're following the evidence wherever it leads, no matter how bizarre or strange it might sound. And I was first aware of you because I heard you on Coast to Coast with George Knapp for a whole series of books called Missing 411. And I want to kind of tell our audience kind of your origin story with that. That's how I learned about you. So did the Missing 411, investigation that you did that kind of lead you into how you're looking at this Sasquatch or Bigfoot mystery and its connection to UAP?
Yes and no. I don't believe that there's an overlap between the regions, other than I did a show for the History Channel called Vanished. And in part of that, it involved a series of people who have disappeared around Mount Shasta. And they flew me to Wisconsin, and I met a physicist named Dr. John Brandenburg. And he at the time was one of 8 theoretical physicists working for NASA. And he explained that portals were real. He said, Dave, it has never been a question while we meet and talk that portals are real. We're looking at how we can use them to our benefit as a government, whether offensively as a space weapon or maybe in the battlefield somehow. And then he said, I've read some of your books, Dave. And he goes, I actually believe that portals are responsible for taking some of the people that you write about. And he said, in your stories, you talk about kids being right next to their parents 1 second, parents turn their head and they turn around, the kids are gone. He says there's very few things that could remove something that quickly other than a portal. And he said that if you look at this as a piece of science, you'll be able to relate it more to your work. And that was pretty much an awakening for me, that there's physicists out there believe it's real, believe it's happening every day, but they're just trying to put their arms around it to see how they can use it.
Okay, hold on. Now I got 100 questions. How dare you? So this is a NASA physicist that you met because you were doing a show for History Channel, and he's openly talking about how nobody's questioning that portholes from another dimension, another reality are real. Can you expand, like, who is this guy? What's his name again? And he says that this is commonly believed or understood.
Name's Dr. John Brandenburg. He's on the History Channel all the time.
Yeah.
On Ancient Aliens. George, you've probably seen him before.
Yeah, for sure.
And no, he's very straightforward about it. And I think he was speaking for his group at the time, the other 8 PhDs that he's working with. And this was probably 6 years ago that show first came out. And since then, having access to people through George, Colm Kelleher, hearing more about this and the experiences they had at the ranch, I mean, it's a complete eye-opener.
And Lakatsky, by the way, Dr. Lakatsky, we can say that now, but he had told me 10, 15 years ago that he thought there was a connection between the missing 411 connection and the kind of things that are seen at the ranch.
Right. And when I spoke to him, thanks to you, he was pretty open about that. And I think it's hard for the audience who are nuts and bolts people to think that science and the strangeness in our force are that weird. And you go in the woods and you tend to think that you're in a safe environment and, nothing's really going to happen. But I tell people all the time that the woods are much more complex than you think.
Jeremy, I know the similarity that occurred to you in watching this film was the commonality with UFOs to how these things can be physical and also non-physical. It allows people to dismiss them. Well, we don't have any bones. They can't be real if you want to. But, I mean, they can be both. I mean, did that jump out at you, the similarity to UFOs?
Yeah, I mean, it's reminding me of a quote of Elon Musk. He was on the Rogan show, and he goes, "Well, if they exist, aliens, they got to be, they seem to be really subtle, right?" And I watched in Dave's movie, he was talking about how they don't find poop from a Bigfoot, and they don't have game camera images. They capture all sorts of animals, but they don't have that. So the elusiveness of this experience that so many people across the world have, it means there is a mystery similar to UFOs. So I think the biggest thing that I noticed is that a lot of people that go out looking for one thing end up seeing another. I mean, so I'm oriented towards the UFO thing. What I heard in your movie, Dave, is that a lot of people go to look for UFOs, and then the uncomfortable reality, they go look for Bigfoot, and then the uncomfortable reality is there's often association with orbs of light and craft and this interdimensional aspect. And I think that really kind of sinks into what you're saying, that this is not as simple as an animal, that there's something more complex going on.
So one of the things you guys will appreciate is in a movie, we had probably 5 times the footage that we put into that film.
Yeah.
We talked about making a second movie. We're not going to, but that's how much footage we had. One of the stories that I brought up that I wanted to put in the movie was from the late 1800s, early 1900s. There was a man who was running cattle on the California-Oregon border. And he kept a journal of every day he was out there working with the Native Americans, etc. Well, this story and the journal made it to Rod Serling's show in the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
And his great-grandson was on the show, and he talked about what I'm going to explain. The story is in my book that is going to be released the same day as the movie, December 1st. Book's the same title as the movie. Everything we couldn't fit in the movie, in the book. So the guy's running cattle. A Native American walks by him. He's carrying a plate of raw meat. Cattleman goes, "Where are you going?" And he goes, "I can't say. You got to talk to the chief." So he walks over to the chief, who he's friends with, and chief says, "You really want to know?" And the guy goes, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, there's a person that lives up in the cliffs up above. He's one of us, but he's all covered in hair." He goes, "Can I see him?" He says, "Yeah." So the next time they bring the plate up, he describes a Bigfoot, exactly. Calm, polite, just hungry. They come back out of the mountains, doesn't say anything, comes back out of the mountains, and the cattleman asks the natives, "Where did he come from?" And the description is key here. The chief says that a moon comes down from the sky, comes down onto the field. Something opens, and 2 or 3 crazy bears jump out of the moon onto the ground and then stay in our area with us. And then somebody that looks like you and me, kinda, waves goodbye, gets back in the moon, and flies away.
Talk for a couple of minutes about the physical evidence that Bigfoot, Sasquatch is a physical being at times, because times it is and times it isn't. The tracks, of course, that's how it got its name. 1958, there had been reports that you've shown me, and you have a book about it, old news clippings that go back hundreds of years, all over the country, all over the world. 1958, those road workers in Northern California see it, they call it Bigfoot, and for some reason that went national. And it was established in sort of the national consciousness from then on. But it's been around a long time, and it's the tracks. Now, as you know, those tracks can be fake. People do hoaxes with a great big footprint, but some of them cannot. I mean, these things, it's not just a big foot, it's a great big stride. And in your film, you have an example of it where it's going through snow. There's no other tracks. There's no backtracking. These tracks are going through snow. There's nothing else around, and it just goes poof. It vanishes. How does somebody hoax that? You know, we've seen things like that at Skinwalker Ranch, where animals are walking through mud and then poof, it's like they are sucked up into the sky. That's a hard one to explain.
Well, on tracks itself, they have something that, depending on the ground that the track is in, something called dermal ridges. Essentially, there's like a fingerprint on the toe. And when they put the imprint on the ground, these dermal ridges, with using fine tracking stuff, you can pull those ridges right off and you can look at them and you can see the fingerprint on the toe. Those can't be fabricated. That's impossible. Now, they're not found very often because the ground has to be perfect and what you're using to pull the track has to be perfect. But I've seen them a number of times. They're real. That's evidence number one. And you're right, that stride is unreal. Number two, years ago, when I got into this, the people that were backing me said, "Hey, Dave, see if you can get DNA." Well, I was in that area of the Patterson-Gimlin footage. There happened to be a sighting while I was there, and this biped reached over this kind of a metal shed and pulled these bags of garbage off, and from the hair on the back side, it pulled the hair off his arms and chest, which is exactly what we needed. We needed the follicle at the end of the hair. We sent those to Dr. Ketchum. She said that's the only second time in a 20-year career at that point she had ever seen anything like that. The other time is when Josh Gates submitted a sample from Yeti in Nepal. That started the ball. And then I went on your show with Dr. Ketchum, and we asked for specimens from all over North America. We got a ton. Now, I should preface that when hair samples are sent in and somebody says on TV, "Yeah, we got the hair samples and sent them right on to for DNA testing," that's completely bull garbage. DNA testing is super expensive. There are something called hair and fiber experts. Those hair and fiber experts have hair from every animal, human in the world. When they look under a microscope, they can compare it. If there's a match, oh, okay, somebody says it's a Bigfoot hair. We look at it under a microscope, it's a deer hair. Well, we're not going to DNA test that. Bigfoot hair looks specifically different. I could teach a 12-year-old in 20 minutes to be an expert under a microscope. It has almost like scales on the hair, completely different than everything. Okay, once we got that match, then it goes on to DNA testing. We ended up getting saliva, blood, plaque, hair from all over North America and Canada. Scott Carpenter and I worked together on getting hair samples out of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And I explain it, and people say, well, that's so stupid. But that's the key. Non-technology related, because for some reason they're aware of technology. The sticky side of packing tape is sterile. So we stuck the sticky side out around a tree, and at the fork of the tree, about 8 foot up, Scott and I kicked around what to use. McDonald's pancakes with syrup. We ended up using bacon grease. And that worked every time. They'd lean up against the tree, eat the grease, pull off, leave the hair. You'd send the sample to Dr. Ketchum. She'd go through the testing. And eventually we ended up, through you, George, we ended up getting some fantastic samples and able to pull nuclear DNA from the paternal side. In the end, we ended up with 110 samples that went through 4 of the highest certified labs in the U.S., including the University of Texas. 5 different PhDs wrote the white paper. And we had access to the most advanced DNA extraction machine in the world at the Louisiana Crime Lab. Submit the sample, walk away, machine does everything. Cleans it, categorizes. And in the end, we had DNA on the maternal side, mitochondrial, from a woman 12 to 1,500 years in the Middle East. On the paternal side, there's where the hiccup was. It had never been categorized before. And GenBank said that was impossible. Everyone said that's impossible. Then the flack started to roll in. I was uninvolved at this point because I wouldn't go to the press conference for various reasons. But the press said, oh, well, it's obvious it's contaminated. That's an idiotic statement. And if I'm there, I explain it as this. Let's pretend I'm the person who got the DNA. And I'm holding the hair sample or the blood or whatever. And I submit it. My DNA's all over it. Well, if they extract my DNA, on the mother's side, they're going to show it's Russian. And on the father's side, it's going to show it's Greek. It is impossible to find a unclassified paternal side on GenBank.
The obvious question that I think people will have in that is, so I understand you wrap the trees in this sterile kind of inside sticky tape. You put bacon grease up. Did you put game cams up or something so you could see what was leaving the hair behind? That's the obvious question.
That is absolutely suicide in Bigfoot research. They
really?
would never come near the tree. That's the reason you don't see any game camera photos of Bigfoot.
Don't know how they know, but somehow they know.
Wow.
I think that they can read in that IR version of light that comes outside the cameras.
Right.
You know, that paper that came out from Dr. Melba Ketchum and all the work that went into that was remarkable. It was also, I guess, not surprising how science would react. It's easier to ignore it. But there were problems in the presentation and how it came out that gave them excuses to not look at the results, right?
Which is why I didn't go. I knew what was coming. And you and I had her introduced to a very famous scientist who explained it to her, who said, this is how you present it. And she chose not to listen to him. So, and when she said that, I said, okay, I'm not involved anymore.
Those results are still available for people who want to look at it, though. Shouldn't they be?
Oh, I talk about them every month that I'm at a conference, and I lay out the facts for them. I think Melba did an unbelievable job on the science side and her writing with these other PhDs to put it together. I know for a fact nobody else has done it, that the way that we got those results.
ultimately you went the extra mile and you did all this work, and the DNA results end up saying that this is from an unknown donor on the male side. So you're saying the female side was human, but on the male side it was unknown, and that is like incontrovertible proof that something is different with these samples. Is that correct?
Correct. We interviewed several people, and Ron Moorhead was involved in doing research on the elongated skulls in Peru. And they had almost identical DNA results on their skulls. And that's why L.A. Marzulli slammed his fist on the table when I told him what our results were. He said, I just knew you were going to get that, because they had the same thing.
So what are these like? Are these hybrids? If they have some human DNA from like 1500s on the female side or whatever you said, are these beings? Are they some sort of genetic experiment, some crossbreeding thing? Like what? How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, did amorous Bigfoot have a human girlfriend 1,200, 15,000 years ago in the Middle East?
So I'm not sure how many people know this, but the only country in the world that really made a dedicated effort to understand Bigfoot research is Russia. And they put some of their top scientists on it. And they believe that the Almasty did breed with a human multiple times. And the human, I don't think it lived very long, but they were almost positive. And by the way, being the only country that researched Bigfoot with federal funding, they also believed it was human. I mean, at the core, not a human hybrid after it interacted with a human. I mean, even before.
The instances in your film of where Bigfoot is seen using some kind of, it enters, people see them enter what sounds like a wormhole. Boom. I don't know if they create it. It's an ability, it's technology, or what your answer might be. And other times they're using cloaking devices, similar to what's been reported at the ranch, where these things, they look like the predator technology that hides them. How many instances of that do you have?
A handful, probably more than we showed on screen, but it's very hard to get people to communicate what they saw, because a lot of people, you see it and you can't even believe what you're seeing. And it's nothing that you're probably ever going to see a second time. So to get people to come forward, hopefully after this movie, others will come forward and explain it. But it's a hard one.
You note that the BFRO, the Bigfoot Research Organization, the big one, gets reports from all over the world. Almost none of them have any details similar to this, right? I guess they know that they would face scorn from the rest of their fellow Bigfoot hunters.
So two people that are on the film, Joe Hauser and Tom Powell, they were in the top tier, the top 5 of BFRO years ago. And they started to do their research, and they started to get these kind of stories we're talking about. And they would submit them, and the people at the top kept, and there hardly anybody above them, kept throwing them out. And eventually they were kicked out of the organization for submitting reports like that. So people know on BFRO, you don't want to submit something like that because there's a good chance it's not going to go through. Which in essence, since that is the largest organization, they're really controlling the flow of information on this topic.
You see every once in a while somebody say, I'm going hunting for Bigfoot, or I shot a Bigfoot, I've got Bigfoot in my freezer, or they'll talk about bounties for Bigfoot. How do you react to people that want to purposely go out there and hunt it? Because I know the tribal lore that you share in the film, they've learned, leave them the hell alone. When they start throwing rocks at you or shaking trees, get out of there, leave them alone.
I think it's kind of hilarious, really. I don't think you can kill one. I really don't think you could maim it. You could hurt it and it'll leave blood, but I don't think that any harm's going to really come to them. I mean, in Pennsylvania, there's been stories that have come out of there where people shot them with a double-barrel shotgun right in the chest. And a lady described that the air started to spin with weird colors. It disappeared, and then she heard it running away from her front door where she shot it. Stan Gordon wrote a book that had these stories in it. It's an impeccable book. You guys ought to have him on your show, really.
Yeah, I've interviewed him a bunch of times. He's really good, and he covers a lot of bases. There are a lot of stories about humans interacting with Bigfoot in a positive way. You leave something out, a pie or something for them to eat, and they'll react. A lot of negative interaction as well, and occasionally almost like conversation. I thought that was maybe the most impressive sort of evidence in your film. I had heard those clips before of what's recorded out in the wilderness, but I never heard them compared and analyzed by a language expert like you have in this movie.
So if you ever get a chance to see Scott Nelson at a conference, I would encourage anybody to go watch him. He's a crypto-linguist specialist from the Navy. He's one of those guys that sat on an island in Nicaragua owned by the U.S., and he would listen to communications between the countries and their leaders without them ever knowing. Fluent in 7 languages, been to the Naval Institute in Monterey, I think 6 times. Super smart guy. Sitting down, listening to Ron Moorhead's tapes from the Sierra Sounds, trying to understand what might be going on. He told me that the first time he heard that, he goes, Dave, I would have bet anything that's language from the very beginning, just by the way it flows, the highs, the lows. Moorhead took that tape that he made in the wilderness to a sound expert. It's outside the bounds of anything a human could make. This is before digitalization. This was done in the 60s. So it couldn't have been manipulated. And when Scott got a hold of it, he did a complete analysis of it, does a presentation about it, breaks it up for you. It's really impressive. Now, the weird part about this is Scott Carpenter and I were together in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park on a Bigfoot-related topic. And Scott would always walk through the woods, he and I together, with a camera rolling. And we're walking out after a full day, and we stop on this ridge, and down below us, in this massive amount of foliage, we hear this same kind of sound that's coming out of the Sierra Sounds. And Scott's got it on tape. And it's not lengthy at all, maybe 20 seconds, 25 seconds. We got back and we sent it to Nelson. He said, guys, I've had hundreds of audio files sent to me. That's the first time anything even got close to the Sierra Sounds. Scott and I later talked about it. He goes, Dave, you know what's really weird? I go through here 3 or 4 times a week for the last 15 years. And it happened when you're here. And that's the weird part.
And those sounds, are they communicating with each other or trying to communicating with humans?
So I tend to think that Bigfoot Sasquatch is way smarter than us. I mean, it shows strategic thinking. And I think it knows it's not communicating with us. I think it's allowing us to have some insight into their language and their abilities. There's an article from 1924 that I put in that book that you have, George, Bigfoot, Wild Men, and Giants, in the Oregonian newspaper that talks about some guys going down a trail. Bigfoot walks out on the trail and starts throwing rocks at them. They turn around and run, go back and tell the sheriff. The sheriff says, I'll get a posse together and I'll kill them all. Don't worry. Well, 3 tribes in Washington get together, unheard of in 1924, and they hold a press conference. And this is front page in the Oregonian, so it's a big deal. The tribes say what they encountered is, they call them Coelitics, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. They're a tribe just like us. We trade with them, we barter, we communicate. They don't look like us, they look different. Don't kill them. If you kill one of them, they'll kill 3 of you. They can mimic anything in the woods.
What do you mean they can mimic anything in the woods?
Mimic another animal. Ron Moorhead said when they were at their site 8 miles from anywhere, which I was at, they were in their shed during the night one time, Bigfoot are out there, and it sounds like their entire camp is getting destroyed. Glasses breaking, things crashing, goes on for 20 minutes. Ron said, Dave, I knew we were going to come out and the whole camp would be wiped out. They go out, there's no damage at all. Another time they come in, and this a group of hunters are in their shed, and they hear a car door open and close multiple times. Impossible. We're 8 miles by horseback from anything. Their ability to mimic almost reminds me of them having a hard drive built into them that they can record and then replicate and produce anytime they want.
Do you have a sense of what they're doing here? I mean, they come in and out, portals. They're from somewhere else, some other dimension. There are descriptions of Bigfoot families, mom and dad, and carrying a baby or something like that. Is it a family vacation? Hey, we're going to see the crazy humans. Or they need something here? Or if there was trade between the tribes and them, what trade what? What do they need?
So during my talks with Colm Kelleher, we talked about, why are the aliens here? Why are they visiting the Skinwalker Ranch? And I said, hey, I'm just a novice, but watching the show and doing the Bigfoot research, it's almost as though the aliens and the Bigfoot are studying us. And they're putting things in front of us and seeing our reaction. And seeing how much wherewithal we have to get over the obstacles put in front of us. Because it seemed like at the ranch, it was daily another obstacle after obstacle after obstacle.
Always different.
Yeah.
Something struck me from your film, which is that I had not known about this, but Indian Head, Chestnut Ridge, the summer of 1973, there was a lot of UFO activity reported. And during that same time, there was also a reporting of the Sasquatch, like in the area. So that's what really grabbed me, was that connection in 1973 of those stories. Additionally, the ambulance in your movie, it talked about an ambulance that was driving and there was a mechanical interference. I mean, it was straight out of Close Encounters. They see some, Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and all of a sudden their whole ambulance electronic system went completely down. Is that common, a kind of common report that you get when you talk to people about this, that there's some technological disturbance going on? You mentioned the cameras, but is that a common thing?
So being a MUFON investigator for 17 years, you being involved in the UFO community, you know that UFOs have this ability to shut down engines. When we heard this about the Bigfoot shutting down this paramedic rig, immediately I started to think about, UFOs do the same thing. So is that another correlation between the two topics? Now,
is it?
I can tell you for a fact that in the 2 years that we filmed this, there were multiple times that we were using some of the most advanced camera systems out there. And not only the camera systems shut down simultaneously sometimes, but then audio shut down. And then other times the audio would stop, a sound would be produced in the woods, and then the audio would start without the video being stopped. That's how much control. And the guy who was our chief videographer, brilliant guy, he said, guys, I've been doing this for a long time. I've never seen anything like that.
Man, I would roll with like analog, little mini DV tapes on a recorder and digital, just in case it would not interfere with one or the other. Yeah, man, that's the problem you see in the UFO world. Some people say when you film a UFO, it's kind of fuzzy a lot of the times because of the propulsion system, the distortion of the power source itself. But we're talking about like beings here. And you mentioned it's almost like they got a hard drive, a digital recorded hard drive that could produce any sound. So, is, in your opinion, after all these years, is the Sasquatch phenomenon, the Bigfoot phenomenon, is it technological in nature? I mean, you're talking about a swirl in front of one that got shot. It's like a cloaking defensive device. I mean, is this a technological phenomenon as well as you said they bleed? So
It's a great question, and I suppose it's outside my pay grade, but I think that everything I showed on this film, I wanted people to come to their own conclusions. And if you notice, there aren't a lot of my opinions in this film because I had some great experts out there and a cross section of the Bigfoot world that you could listen to and make your own decision off of what they are saying and off of their lifetime of experiences. One of the things that Rob Alley wrote a book, lived in Alaska for a long time, Dr. Rob Alley, and he had a series of reports of Bigfoot swimming amongst the islands in Alaska. And sometimes the Bigfoot would get on the boats, the fishing boats in a little cove in the middle of the night, and they'd start rocking. The guys would get up, and there's a Bigfoot standing there looking for some fish or something. Well, what Alley explained was gorillas, apes, they know how to swim, but they don't want to swim, and they don't like swimming. And I think it's one of those points that kind of diminishes the side of the argument that it's Gigantopithecus or Paranthropus. And when I do conferences, I say one thing at the end. I say, I really want you to think hard about all the evidence that you can find that supports this is Paranthropus or Gigantopithecus, because we have DNA on those two. Yet we've recovered hundreds of hair samples over the years, and we've never found that DNA in any hair sample. There's never been a bone of those in North America. So where is the real evidence that that side of the fence points to that it's an ape or a gorilla?
Right. We would have a bone, from one of these animals at this point, if it was just some, kind of offshoot in evolution that's hiding out in the vast wilderness. But you're saying we don't have that. And in fact, we have corroborative evidence that is different than that when you get to the DNA samples.
100% true, Jeremy. And one of the things I've asked others to do on the academic side that attack us, that say, oh, you know what, your DNA is wrong and this, that. Well, those academic sites can apply for an educational grant tomorrow, get it within 30 days, and study DNA tomorrow. But you notice they don't do it. And they never have done it. They claim. Personally, I think that somebody has done it. They got the results. They didn't like the results, and they just hush it. Otherwise, why not do it?
You hear these stories over the years in Bigfoot lore about giants that are found, bones, these big bones, and the Smithsonian somehow always gets them and stashes them away. You think Smithsonian has a big stash of bones from some other creature, whether it's Bigfoot, Sasquatch, red-headed giants of Lovelock Cave, anything like that?
So in that book, Bigfoot, Wild Men, and Giants, I pulled those articles, and they're in that book, the entire article. And there's many, many giants that have been found in mounds and things in North America. And I would say 80% of the time, the articles in big major newspapers in the U.S. say in the article, it's going to the Smithsonian. Where'd they go? They all claim they don't have them. So
I recall when you published the series of Missing 411 books, after you've done 2 Bigfoot books, and you would not say what you think is responsible in those books, and it drove your readers crazy. Come on, Dave. Admit it's Bigfoot. You know it's Bigfoot doing this. Any Bigfoot kidnappings that are responsible for missing 411 cases that you know of?
George, I swear to you, I cannot find any factual evidence that Bigfoot has taken anybody in the last 100 years. And there's some convincing stories, in the early 1900s and 1800s that happened. I can't find any now. And I've been accused, well, well, all the evidence is in front of you. I wrote all the books. Go show me the evidence. Unfortunately, I would say that probably 90% of the stories you're hearing on YouTube about Bigfoot attacks, Bigfoot takes this and that, 90% of those stories are fiction because they want to identify who's making the statement, where it's happening. They won't refer to a police report. They won't give you a date or exact location, and they won't let the person identify themselves. Every one of my books has a photo of the witness, their name, their location, and they signed an affidavit under penalty of perjury that what they said was the truth.
So give us a pitch on the movie. We're going to include a trailer, but give us a pitch on the movie. Who should see this? Where it's going to be available? What you're proudest of in the film?
One of the things I'm proudest of is that I got everybody in that movie that I wanted to. It's people that I've worked with at other conferences that they trusted me enough to go in the movie, that I wouldn't misrepresent them and allow them to say their piece. And the way it kind of all came together, and I don't know, you guys see it, you should say so, but to me, it all made sense. It seemed to flow down this line that, to me, I tried to make it easy for somebody who didn't really know a lot about it to understand it. Was that obvious to you guys?
Yeah. Took you from the beginning to the end. Yeah.
And where were you going to see it? It's going to be everywhere, streaming platforms?
Starting December 1st, it should be on Amazon, Apple TV, and a few others. If you want a Blu-ray or DVD, you can get that directly from our site, missing411.com, or you go to NA, like North America, NABigfootsearch.com. Also, my book will be on my site.
I've been a woodsman all my life, and then I've never been afraid of anything that's in the woods. But I am just a little bit afraid of these Bigfoots. When you go up there, you're in their backyard.
They have been here for a long time.
Oh, there you go. It's not simply some creature.
There's two divergent thoughts on what Bigfoot is. One side believes it's an ape, gorilla. The other school of thought is it's multidimensional.
There's a physical and a non-physical aspect to it.
You've got Bigfoot, you've got orbs, and I mean, the two go hand in hand.
You go have a Bigfoot sighting and then a UFO sighting or vice versa.
There is high strangeness attached to almost every meaningful Bigfoot encounter.
We started tracking this creature. The tracks disappear. They're gone.
Some people know some things that they don't want other people to know.
It's pretty surprising what we found. Skinwalker Ranch. Research on orbs, Bigfoot.
There were unusual creatures on Skinwalker Ranch.
There's a lot of information that doesn't get talked about. The paranormal things that no ape could certainly do.
If you're out to solve the problem, you're going to have to know all aspects of it.
I saw a Sasquatch and it vanished into thin air.
Through the night vision, seeing something completely different.
There's things out there we just don't see or understand.
Has the ability to cloak.
It rewrites history.
They were astonishing to see.
Right here.
Got a question that you talked about the oral history of Native Americans and how, one of the descriptions is for the Bigfoot is that the moon came down and kind of landed and let them out, two of them. And then there's like a humanoid kind of waving. In your extensive history and looking into these sightings, have you heard of, and how many people have said that there's some kind of flying saucer that comes down and lets the Bigfoot out? Is that something that you've heard a bunch, or?
I've heard it numerous times. Stan Gordon has written about it in his books about Pennsylvania UFOs and Bigfoot. And then abductees, UFO abductees, have talked about a Bigfoot-looking creature that acts subservient to the alien entities on a craft. So if you look deep enough, you can kind of see this stretched across how it kind of makes sense.
Are you done with 411?
Oh, gosh, no. In fact, in March or April of this coming year, we have Missing 411 National Parks coming out. Primary filming's already done. We're in the middle of post-production right now.
Is the National Park Service finally opening up and sharing information? I'm being facetious, of course.
Oh, let me tell you, George, they love you too. When you came out and you said, hey, they have a list and they're not telling you. No, they, since the National Park Service was sued because somebody like me was in the parks that got a citation for filming without a permit. They ended up taking it up to the appellate courts. Appellate courts came back and said, as long as you have 5 or fewer people in your crew, they can't control you where you film in the park. So we had 5. We didn't even tell them we went in and just filmed.
Yeah, they must love you.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. When the film comes out, they're going to really hate me.
I want to bring it back real quick because I noticed in your film, I saw Dr. Colm Kelleher, and George and I were friends with him and we've worked with him, and he's had some really great access to a lot of these investigations. One story that George and I talked about in a movie that we put out, Hunt for the Skinwalker, it was a story about how when the scientists were on the ranch, how they saw a sort of porthole open up through night vision. And through that 3-dimensional porthole, a huge, heavy-set, dark being came out of it. And this is what I think AAWSAP was looking at, is if you have portholes, if they're real and they connect to other dimensions and you can deploy troops, then that is a national security issue. You bring that up and show this really cool kind of animation, or not animation, but recreation of what they were seeing. And I'm just like curious if that description of these Bigfoot or these beings, because I don't know that Dr. Kelleher called it that, but these big beings coming out of a porthole, is that something else that you often hear associated in your research on this thing?
No. I think it's very rarely seen, very rare. And the way Kelleher described it, it was a very dark night. You couldn't see specifics about it. It appeared to be a biped, human form, crawled out, got out, walked away on 2 feet. And then they came back the next day and couldn't find any evidence. Kind of consistent. And the way he described the scientists looking down the tube almost 3-dimensionally, compelling.
Yeah, it was a tall, like 8-foot tall, humanoid shape, dark, because it was late at night, but they didn't call it Bigfoot, but there are other Bigfoot sightings in connection with the ranch and in that area, some of which are pretty darn dramatic, and the people did get a good look at them. The people on the reservation, on the Uinta reservation, have seen them for a long time, like tribes all across North America. And it was really puzzling for years about what the connection would be to a UFO hotspot between, aliens, presumed aliens, and Bigfoot, and then all kinds of other creatures seem to come through that portal as well, as if, as Colm says in your film, as if they kind of dragged along from wherever else they live.
Yeah. No, he hit the nail on the head. And in the movie, we talked about a sighting made by Adam Davies. And I suppose that would be another portal example where he's looking down that almost 3-dimensionally, sees down there, just like they were describing at the ranch. So there were 2 really, really good examples from credible people that this is happening.
I just got 2 kind of bigger questions for you that have been haunting me. So, just to the best of your understanding, are Bigfoot from here or somewhere else? Like, what is your best answer to that at this point in your research?
So I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And I would never be convinced that I'm the first one that found that DNA being unusual. So I tend to think that it's a human hybrid. And we've always talked about making a human bigger, stronger, faster. There it is. And you could probably add even smarter and more elusive. So did we as a society have the ability to build that? I don't think so. So where did it come from? Well, if you believe the abductees that say that they saw something just like Bigfoot on a craft, then it's coming from some other entity. And I defer to that.
So it's a visitor.
I tend to think they do visit. How many times has anyone ever heard of someone walking up on a group of Bigfoot sleeping? Hardly ever. So if they have to sleep, if they're a standard animal, human, but hardly anyone ever sees them sleeping. And then I'll throw this out to you that I always say to conference, is that I personally believe the Patterson-Gimlin film is real, not hoax, the best footage we have of a Bigfoot. But here's the question. In 1967, when that was filmed, what percentage of people in the woods had the ability to film a Bigfoot like Gimlin and Patterson did in 1967? What percentage had that ability?
Pretty small.
And it was analog without infrared light, matching your theory that somehow they're detecting these modern game cams. So what's the biggest misconception? Because, look, it's a polarizing topic, this idea of Bigfoot. It's a matter of belief for most people. What is the biggest misconception about the kind of rich history of Sasquatch sightings that you've kind of looked at over all these years?
So I'll get to that, but I didn't get to my second part of my statement here. So my guess would be it'd be less than 0.1% of the people in the woods during 67. So my question to the audience at the end is, what percentage of people today have the ability to take motion footage of a Bigfoot if they saw it in the woods? Now.
A lot higher.
99%?
Yeah.
And why don't we have better footage?
It's as if Bigfoot knows who's got cameras and who doesn't, and it offers opportunities here and there.
It's to me, that's the $1 million question. I don't know, because we still have a lot of people seeing Bigfoot and reported seeing it, but you don't have a lot of footage of it, which is, I think, odd. I'm sorry, Jeremy. So the biggest misconception about Bigfoot, you said?
Yeah, just kind of out of all this that you've looked at, because it's a polarizing topic, what is the biggest misconception people have?
That it's an ape or a gorilla. I think
that doesn't fit the evidence.
If it was an ape or gorilla, I think we'd have it in a cage somewhere. I think that someone would have shot it. We would have the DNA. We don't have any of that.
Well, Dave, best of luck with the film. I liked it. I'm going to watch it again. We'll be talking to you again soon on other platforms, and wish you all the best with the film and the book as soon as they come out.
Yeah.
Guys,
this is going to come out
on your show. I really.
Yeah, this is going to come out the day after your film launches, so people can literally go right now and check it out.
Awesome. Thank you very much, guys.